Hello everybody, and welcome to the Week 1 recap of the 2021 NHL season on the Unparalleled Success Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Woods, and today we're going to talk about the opening 2 games of the season for the Ottawa Senators against the Toronto Maple Leafs. I will also have Gruw join the show for Waiver Wire, where we talk about some player transactions and rumors from around the league, as well as teams that exceeded his expectations and disappointed him in the first week. And I'll also ask him about his favorite team, the Colorado Avalanche. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about Friday night. Season opener against the Maple Leafs. I have not seen the Sens fan base so excited for a season opener since probably the 2017-18 season, which was right after we made it to the conference finals against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Obviously, expectations were high that season, and we were disappointed. We all know how the last 3 years have gone, so the fact that we have so much youth this year and some veteran presence, as well as the offseason moves that were made by Pierre Dorion. We're very excited for this season to get going, and the team did not disappoint Friday night. What a game that was against the Leafs with the big 5-3 victory. I think that the performance from everyone on the team, it was such a team effort to be able to limit the offense from the Leafs to just 23 shots, was very promising for the season ahead, as defense has been a weakness for us for a long time, and to be able to limit such an elite team to just 23 shots, most of which were from the outside, was very exciting. And then the offense looked great as well. I mean, we've got the top line with Tkachuk, Norris, Batherson combining for 7 points. We got to see Stepan and Watson get their first goals since joining the Ottawa Senators, and even Nikita Zaitsev pitching in with 3 assists in his first 2 games. So for each of the games, I'm going to give my positive and my negative thought from each game. So for me, the biggest positive on Friday night was limiting the Leafs to 23 shots, whereas the biggest negative was the discipline. We took 5 penalties. We took some undisciplined penalties. Stepan with the delay of game over the glass penalty, that was one of the most absurd penalties I've ever seen. I asked myself, how high did he think the glass was? Because he cleared it by a good 40 feet. I've never seen anything like it before. And then Chabot took a couple of penalties, high sticking and holding. Paquette took a holding penalty, and I forget who took the last holding penalty as well. But when you take your hand off your stick, that's just a lazy penalty. When you high stick someone, you got to have control of your stick. And a puck over the glass, when you're 5 feet away from the boards and you clear it by 40 feet, that's just an under pressure play. Most of the time, you're trying to chip it off the glass and you just miss it by a few feet. But it wasn't even close for Stepan. It was kind of hilarious. So for me, when we give the Leafs 5 power plays and they convert on 2 of them, and we win the game 5-3, we could have won that just as easily 5-2 or 5-1 if it weren't for the 2 power play goals. So that's just something I would like for them to be more mindful of. I know DJ Smith said before the season that to be successful, we're going to have to play physical hockey and stay out of the box. But these weren't penalties that were taken as a result of playing physical hockey. If you take an interference penalty by trying to take the body when you're like maybe within 5 feet of the puck and you get called for interference, that happens when you might get your stick caught up battling for the puck and they fall to the ice. You might get called for the trip, but these weren't those types of penalties. These were undisciplined, lazy penalties that I think we're going to need to lay off of if we want to be able to have more success this season, because we can't be giving teams like the Toronto Maple Leafs 5 power plays a night, or considering that we're going to be playing the Winnipeg Jets and the Edmonton Oilers as well, teams with lethal offensive power plays. So that's the biggest downside about Friday night. Just to nitpick, because I really loved the game from everybody. Matt Murray looked great, the offense looked great, and the defense looked great, limiting the Leafs to 23 shots. So just the discipline, I would like to see us get a few less penalties and stay out of the box. Saturday was a bit of a different story. We came out sluggish. We only got 19 shots on goal, and the Leafs were able to take advantage, getting 3 past Matt Murray on 40 shots. So it was still a good game for Matt Murray. He was the biggest positive for me because he kept us in it, gave us a chance to win. I was worried about Matt Murray entering the season because of his struggles last year, the sub 900 save percentage, but the one most impressive stat from Matt Murray that stands out to me is his win-loss record. Even last year on a Pittsburgh team that wasn't great, he had 20 wins and only 11 losses, and in his career, he's had so many more wins than he has losses, it's not even funny. So to be able to have a goalie with the winning pedigree that Matt Murray has come to Ottawa, despite my reservations heading into the season, he really solidified himself as a fan favorite in the first 2 games of this season, and we will see how he continues to progress. But for me, he was our biggest positive, especially Saturday, facing 40 shots and giving us a chance to win that game. The biggest problem, the biggest issue for the negative for Saturday night's game was, of course, the power play. We had 5 power play opportunities, and we generated absolutely nothing. I had a little bit of hope heading into the season that the power play would be better because we have Norris and Batherson as well as Chabot and Stützle also to provide a better presence on the power play. But this weekend, Saturday especially, was not looking promising for the power play. They were standing still in the zone. They were making it so easy for the Leafs to get set up on the box, and they didn't even have to move around. They just had to stay in the box and wait for the Sens to make a bad pass to break it off and send it back down the ice. And that's the problem. Once they gained possession, whether it be off the face-off or whether they intercepted a pass, we couldn't get back into the zone. It was a disaster. We were trying the 50-foot drop pass, and it wasn't working because every time we drop it back into our own end, the other team has so much time to reset for the next puck carrier that we just couldn't get back into the zone. And I saw one tweet on Twitter from Matthew McKenna, and he tweeted the Corsi 4/60 standings after the first few games of the season, and Ottawa was dead last with a Corsi 4 of 50 per 60 minutes, which was just ridiculous. The next closest team at the bottom of the standings had 10 more attempts per 60 minutes than we did, and like some of the teams in the 15, like the middle of the league average range, were like up around 100 Corsi 4 per 60, and then Ottawa not even close at 50, generating absolutely nothing. So that got me thinking, when's the last time Ottawa had a good power play? And I found a website that listed the standings for the team's power play percentages for the last 15 seasons. And in the last 15 seasons, in an era where we had units that included Alfie Heatley, Spezza, and Wade Redden, as well as Carlson, Hoffman, Stone, and Turris, in 15 years, we have not had a single top 10 power play. Let that sink in. I'm not even asking for a top 3 or a top 5 finish, just top 10. Good. A good power play. Not an elite power play, just slightly above average, but we haven't done that once in the past 15 years, which is kind of amazing when you think about it, that we haven't had one coach or one player who's been able to look at tape from other teams with successful power plays and been able to break out what makes them successful and to be able to translate to that success for the Sens. Not once in 15 years have we had a good power play. So that's pretty amazing. I hope that with the influx of young talent such as Stützle, Norris, and Batherson and Chabot, we will be able to turn it around, because Friday night's power play goal that Chabot had was amazing. He worked the give and go to perfection, drop it down low, work his way around Marner, get set immediately for the one-timer, the saucer pass to the right to the back of the net from Chabot. So there is potential, but Saturday, you wouldn't have been able to tell. So that was the biggest negative out of Saturday's game, which was still a 3-2 loss. So there was lots of potential, and it was a good start. We're very happy to get the split against the Leafs, but going into this week, I'll look for some improvements on the power play. With that being said, let's get into our next segment, the Waiver Wire with Gruw. It is my pleasure to welcome to this week's edition of the Waiver Wire my classmate from the radio broadcasting program at Algonquin College and Colorado Avalanche fan, Gruw. How's it going today?
It's going very good. It's a perfect jersey to have up.
Thanks, I'm glad you enjoy it. So we've got quite a bit to talk about today, as the NHL season is not even a week old yet, but there's lots of rumors and maneuvers as teams are beginning to set their rosters, and of course with the additional element of the taxi squad this season, Jason Spezza and Aaron Dell were both placed on waivers yesterday. What were your thoughts on Spezza being placed on waivers, and did Did you have any appetite for the Sens to pick him up, of course, before he did clear at noon today?
I mean, at first, okay. So, what did I think about him being put on waivers? I get it. I mean, they're really deep, so they're just trying to get some young guys in there. They're trying to shuffle up the lines. Um, as far as did I want Ottawa to pick him up? At first, yes, because I'm like, all right, cool. Spets is at the end of his career. Let's have him retire as a Sen. But then his agent came out and said, oh, if he gets picked up, he's going to retire, which is really weird. Like, I don't know. That's strange. Because if Toronto is going to put you on the taxi squad, there's a chance that you sit there all year. Like, you might play 10, 20 games, but you also just might not play. And I guess he's cool with it. He just wants to be on a playoff team. He wants to be on a championship contending team. He doesn't want to go anywhere else. It makes me a little sad that he doesn't want to retire as a Sen. But yeah, as soon as his agent said that, I was like, all right, let the guy do his thing. I'm not surprised that he cleared, because after that was said, I think everyone was just kind of like, all right, it's fine.
Do you think that Spezza would have actually retired if he had gotten claimed, or do you think he was using that as a ploy so that any of the non-playoff teams wouldn't have picked him up? Or do you think at this point in his career, the fact that if an American team would have had to have claimed him, he would have had to quarantine for 14 days may have also played a role in the statement that was put out by his agent?
I think it really depends who would have claimed him. Like, if a really good team would have claimed him, I think he would have thought long and hard about possibly going and winning a ring. Like, I mean, Colorado has no room for him, but if a team like that, if a powerhouse would have claimed him, yeah, I think he would eventually would have bit the bullet, quarantined, and went. But I mean, if a team in the bottom of the standings would have picked him up, he would have retired. I think his best hockey is really, really behind him at this point. He's a nice, like, third, fourth line addition, maybe, kind of, but he's a little bit of a liability defensively. So, yeah, I think he would have retired for the most part. I think only the top 5, 7 teams could have claimed him and maybe convinced him to play.
Of course, Spezza did clear waivers, so he's going to be assigned to the taxi squad. But one player who still might be on the move is Columbus Blue Jackets center Pierre-Luc Dubois. The Blue Jackets are an interesting team because they've been trying to contend in the playoffs for the past few seasons, and they traded away a lot of assets to get there, but they really have no positive direction right now. Right now, as we're recording this interview, they're losing 1-0 to the Detroit Red Wings as Bobby Ryan got his second goal in as many games. So it's not looking great for the Blue Jackets, and Dubois has requested a trade. The favorites right now to acquire him are the Montreal Canadiens. What do you think about the asking price for Pierre-Luc Dubois? And do you think that Montreal would make a mistake by giving up a piece such as Nick Suzuki plus to acquire him?
Okay, there's a lot going on here. First of all, I feel so bad for Columbus because they made so many moves to try to just do the best they could. And I forget his name. I don't know why I'm blanking on Columbus's GM's name, but I loved what he did. He was just like, you know what? I know I might lose some of these guys to the free agency, but I'm going to try to build the best roster I can and hopefully maybe convince them to re-sign. That didn't work. No one wants to play in Columbus. It sucks. I feel bad for them. But as far as Dubois' asking price, I don't think it's going to be Suzuki. I read an article, I forget where, I think it was on Fansided, and I read an article that was saying the conversation is probably going to be, hey, I want Suzuki, and then the answer will be no. Okay, well, I want Romanov. And then the answer will be no. And then he's going to call the rest of the teams and see if he can get a bite there. And then he'll circle back to Montreal and then start talking about possibly, which I think is more realistic, Kotkaniemi, a package that revolves around Kotkaniemi. I would not give up Suzuki. I would not give up Romanov. I think you can't do that. I like Kotkaniemi. But if you can package a guy like Kotkaniemi, and you're going to need to move some salary as well. The name that was thrown around was Paul Byron. Kotkaniemi, Paul Byron, and another prospect. That kind of package might start moving the needle a little bit, and I think it's worth it. I love Kotkaniemi's potential, and I think he could be a top-line center, but he's not physical. He's a slender guy. He's more of a skill guy. And Montreal, I'm just tired of seeing small, slender skill guys. I want big bodies, and I want someone who could be physical, and that's Dubois. He's a big dude. He can score. He can skate. He can throw the body around. He's decent on the face-off circle. I think it's a perfect addition for Montreal. Not to mention it's Pierre-Luc Dubois. I mean, he's built for that market. But I would not give up Suzuki. I would not give up Romanov, and I really hope they don't even consider doing that.
I agree. Those are two blue chip prospects who could be as good, if not better, than Dubois, not only in a few years, but also this year they have the potential to catch up to him. Those are just two of the best prospects in the league. Moving on to a more general topic, as the season's almost a week old, who are some of the teams that have stood out in a positive way to you so far?
I mean, it's kind of hard not to say Philly. 2-0. They had two standout offensive performances by two different guys. I mean, Joel Farabee is looking like he's going to break out officially. And Konechny, he already kind of broke out last year, but he's looking to break out again, which is really impressive. I love their squad. They have a lot of firepower. I love Provorov. So, like, I'm a big Provorov guy. I'm kind of over on Ghost. I think Gostisbehere is kind of third line pairing. I would move Ghost out at this point. I'm not a big fan. But that team is really solid. Kevin Hayes looks really good on that team. I mean, you got the anchors like Giroux and Voracek who just aren't going anywhere. That team's really impressive. And then you have Carter Hart, who's looking like the early Vezina favorite. And he already said that he wants to win Vezinas. He wants to be one of the greatest of all time. So Carter Hart is hungry. He's really good. So that team is scary. That team is very, very impressive. And then Vegas. I mean, Vegas is Vegas. They're looking amazing. Their puck movement is fantastic. They added Pietrangelo, who's looking really good. They got Theodore. It's both Theodore and Pietrangelo are like in the mentions for like early Norris, which is crazy. Like, you got two guys that could be Norris winners. And then they got like probably the best goalie tandem in the league, right? With Flower and Lehner. So it's kind of hard not to say those two teams. I want to say my Avs because I love them, but that first game was really disappointing. So
absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Those are two great choices. And now if we look at the other end of the spectrum, of course, I'm going to ask you to omit the Chicago Blackhawks because we knew they were going to be dreadful at the beginning of the season. But is there a team that's disappointed you so far?
Yeah, Edmonton. And there's a very, very, like, good reason why. They gave up 35, 40, and 36 shots in their 3 games. For a team that already has extremely questionable goaltending, that's way too many shots. And Dave Tippett is, like, he wants to preach defense. So you know he's going crazy. He just doesn't want to see that many shots. And I don't know what's going to change there. Their forwards, they remind me of Colorado in a sense that they're very, very high-powered offense. But Colorado's forwards do a better job of getting back. They do a better job of stick checking, and they're a bit more responsible. And I don't know if that's just because Jared Bednar has had more time to kind of drill that into them. But Edmonton's defense is looking really suspect. They're going to have to play Nurse 25 plus every night. And from a fantasy hockey perspective, Edmonton's a gold mine. I love them. But reality perspective, they're going to have a hard time stopping that puck from going into the net. Koskinen is just an okay goaltender. I don't think he's a starter. I think they just placed Mike Smith on IR, right? Or IL, so like that's not good. I'm really disappointed in their defense, and I think they're going to struggle, which makes me sad because their offense is unbelievable.
Before we wrap things up, I want to talk about your Avs for a minute. They were expected to be a cup container going into the season. Of course, they didn't live up to that in their first game with the 4-1 loss against the Blues, as you mentioned. They had a disappointing start to the season, but it's only one game. What did you make of their ability to bounce back and destroy the Blues 8-0 in their second game? And how do you think that they can build off of that moving forward?
So the 8-0 game, I'm not surprised because when I watched the first game, they played terrible. Like, they played really bad. They kept coughing up the puck in our own zone. I'm going to say our because I'm just going to say our. We kept coughing up the puck in our own zone. Grubauer's rebound control was all over the place. He was just giving up juicy rebounds. We weren't clearing them. We were just we were doing sloppy passes coming out of our own end. We couldn't get the breakout going. It was just bad. It was a bad game. And even with that, we had a lot of scoring chances, and Binnington looked pretty good. So that game could have been 4-4 if it wasn't for Binnington's wizardry. So going into the second game, I was like, all right, if we clean it up, we'll be fine. And wow, did we ever clean it up. We only gave up 21 shots. The breakout looked unbelievable. And I don't care what the percentages say at the end of the year. Even if we're not ranked as the first power play percentage-wise, this is the best power play in the league. There's no question about it. There's way too much skill and firepower to give up penalties to this team. Cale Makar looks like he will never make a bad play in his life on the power play. It's unbelievable. His vision is just mind-blowing. I love that kid. And Burakovsky is, I think, the X factor because he's looking really good. I've always liked him. Even in Washington, I thought his ability to create plays was really impressive. But right now, he's looking like he's settled in. He's looking comfortable. He's looking like he's looking to score, which is huge. And, I mean, I don't even have to talk about McKinnon because every time that guy steps on the ice, he does ridiculous things. He's Hart candidate year in, year out. So I'm really happy with what I saw in the second game. And the first game bothered me, but not that much because I'm chalking it up to rust. It's not that big a deal. I'm really happy.
I'm glad that they bounced back because Cale Makar was my choice for the Norris winner in the preseason, so I was excited to see him have a huge game. You mentioned Andre Burakovsky, and it's easy for him to get lost in the shovel behind Landeskog, McKinnon, and Rantanen and Makar because of how deep Colorado is. But do you think that there may be anyone in the league who is underrated as Burakovsky?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, off the top of my head, I think Burakovsky is definitely one of the most underrated players in the league. I thought that in Washington as well. When you see him on the ice, he stands out. He makes plays. He's really good with the puck, especially offensively. He needs to work a little harder defensively coming back. But when he has the puck on his stick, he makes the right plays. He makes the right passes. He finds the open spot. He finds the open space, and his shot is nasty. As far as underrated, man, I don't know. I'm gonna give it to Burakovsky right now. But you mentioned how deep Colorado is, and Tyson Jost is on their fourth line. Tyson Jost was a pretty top prospect back in the day, just a couple of years ago. He's still really young. Tyson Jost has looked really good. He's looked like he's making some good decisions. He's skating hard. I'm happy about that. They added Nichushkin's still looking good, and they added Belmar, who I think is another really underrated guy. Belmar is really solid in the face-off circle, really responsible defensively, and he makes plays. I remember watching him in Vegas, and every time he was on the ice, he made something happen. I love Belmar, so I think that's a great addition. I think they're really deep, and yeah, I think Burakovsky is probably one of the most underrated players in the league.
Right on. Thanks for taking the time to come on the show today, Gruw, and best of luck to you and your Avs for the rest of the season.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks again to Gruw for coming on the show. We move on to our final segment of this week's episode, the Week 2 preview for the Ottawa Senators. The Sens have 3 games this week. All of them are against the Winnipeg Jets. We play Tuesday and Thursday in Ottawa and then finish off the week on the road in Winnipeg. So it's a 3-game series against Winnipeg. We previewed them on the show last week with Eric Raymond, and we both thought that they could be a playoff team. But lots of people think that they might miss the playoffs, that they had to pick 3 teams to miss. The Jets are on most people's list to be one of the 3 teams that won't qualify for the playoffs. But this is a huge week for Ottawa. With 3 games, you would love to see them get at least 3 points. If they win one and take another one to overtime, I know I'll be happy with 3 out of 6 possible points. But if we're able to get 4, that would be amazing to start the season with a 3-2 record against 2 great teams such as the Maple Leafs and Winnipeg Jets, because the Jets have an elite top 6, they have a Vezina Trophy winning goaltender, and their defense, although many people consider it a little bit sus, they still have Josh Morrissey, Neil Pionk, and some other great tools on the back end as well. So it'll be a great week. I was a little bit worried when the Jets had to cancel practice on the weekend out of an abundance of cautions for COVID-19, but they were back on the ice yesterday and they're ready to go. So it'll be an exciting week with the first triple header for the Sens this season. 3 games against the Jets, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they do, and hopefully we can take at least 3 out of 6 points, if not more. So we'll talk to you again after this week, and we'll recap the next week again on next Monday. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or any other platform, feel free to share with your friends. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week, and go Sens go!